consumer. But for mainstream economics, capital is just one letter, K, and that's their variable for capital. So they can't even perceive the problems I'm describing. Because what I've described is the capital structure has been totally discombobulated because the interference with interest rates makes the higher order stages of production artificially more profitable. Well, they don't even see that. All they just see is K. They just see capital. They don't see that it's different stages that have been artificially stimulated. So what we need is, again, we need different kinds of consumption. Instead of $7 ice cream cones, $1 cups of coffee. Instead of this, then that. That's what needs to be done at a micro level. And as I say, every single thing the federal government is doing is interfering with that process. Now, you may say to me, finally, this will be my last point, I promise. I'll finish the stimulus thing just by saying I wrote an article on the stimulus package, which I would have written if John McCain had passed it, by the way. I was, in case anybody's wondering, I was against John McCain, who I thought was an absolute disgrace and an embarrassment. Yeah, that takes a lot of courage to get up for a crowd in Boulder and say you're against John McCain. But anyway, so I wrote this article called Tooth Fairy Economics that I think you might enjoy, and that's at my website is called tomwoods.com, so you can check that out there. But there's an interesting example from American history I just want to give briefly, and that's 1920-21. Nobody remembers there was a depression in 1920-21. But yet, that depression, which went on for about a year and a half, the first year of that was worse than the Great Depression of 1929. And so, in terms of unemployment, production collapsing, everything else. So what did they do to get out of it? Did they have a stimulus package? To the contrary, not only was there no stimulus, misnamed stimulus package, to the contrary, the federal government cut its budget, which every textbook tells you, oh no, can't do that. That will interfere with aggregate demand and all this. Well, okay. Who are you going to believe, the textbooks or your own eyes? Because what did the Fed do? The Fed was largely passive in all this. In fact, the Fed didn't even start engaging in open market operations until 1922. By mid-1921, the thing is over. The economy has recovered. It has a very robust recovery. Now, conversely, when we think of Japan or other episodes in American history, when we see governments saying, all right, everybody, we're going to roll up our sleeves and solve this thing, and they proceed to do every single thing Hayek's theory implies they should not do. It goes on and on and on. They just wonder, gosh, big business is even more evil than we thought. They're just deliberately holding... come on. Can we at least try a different way once? Because it seems to me we've been listening quite long enough to the Ben Bernankes of the world, the Hank Paulsons who told us that the economy was stronger than he'd ever seen in his whole life. We've listened to all these, childish types. Have no idea what they're talking about. It seems to me we ought instead to listen to some of the people who, and yes, there were some, who predicted the current crisis, not just because it was just at random, or they were soothsayers, they had a crystal ball, but Jim Grant of Grant's Interest Rate Observer, Jim Rogers, Peter Schiff, and Congressman Ron Paul. Now, Ron Paul was made fun of. How can you say? Haven't you heard? The fundamentals of the economy are sound. Everybody got that memo. The New York Times, the Washington Post, everybody got that memo. The fundamentals of the economy are sound. What's the matter with you? And he warned that there was something wrong. Yet, are these men's phones ringing out the hook? Is anybody calling them for advice? No. No, the rule of thumb under the previous administration, as under this one, because, it's a revolving door of more or less the same people. I could easily see Geiger having been appointed by John McCain. Very easy to see that. I could see a lot of these foreign policy people having been appointed by John McCain. Very easy to see that. It disturbs me that Bill Kristol, who is evil embodied, says that he heard Obama's Afghanistan speech and he said, all hail Obama. Wake up, people. It's the same bunch of people doing this to us. But anyway, in this administration, as with the previous one, seems to be, the more blindsided you were, the more totally clueless you were. The more you predicted the exact opposite of what happened, the more we want to hear from you. Line up and let's hear. Instead, it seems to me we could stand to hear from an alternative tradition that has been suppressed for years because it does not say what governments want it to say. It does not say, you are the saviors who can create like God himself out of nothing. You can't do that. You cannot do that. Wealth can't be created that way. All you can do is get in the way of private actors who are trying to coordinate a vast structure of production across almost 300 million people, and that when a bust comes that you caused, you better stay out of it because all you're going to do is make things worse. Well, they have history on their side. they have sound theory on their side, and they have common sense on their side. It seems to me that if we listen to these people, that would be change we can believe in. So thank you very much.